All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Life by Mazak podcast channel. I have been at this for a number of years without any real traction. But my goal has always been, and my direction from those outside of this reality have made it clear that my goal is to share my information, my experiences that I've had with clients and my own self. And so here I am doing that. And I've been at it for a very long time. And I recently received an email from an organization that noted that I was in the top 30 of over 2.7 million podcasts. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, that was very humbling. I'm like, I've been at this for years, and all of a sudden, people are noticing me, and then people are calling me, and people are reaching out to me, and that is really awesome. And then that's the real goal here is as I've been told to do, is to share this information, get it out to the world and let people make up their own minds and figure out things and just give them the nuggets and the information to I don't know, to move forward in life, to change, to do things better, to do things different, maybe do more research. But this particular platform, it you can look, I guess, by the host, the location of the podcast, the demographics, and lots of different things. You can check on emails, you can reach out to them, you can pitch to them, and it doesn't take very much time. So you get a chance, say, go out and look at or visit millionpodcast.com and you'll see I am number 30, which, like I said, is very, very humbling and never imagined I would ever be in that position. Maybe one day be number one. I don't know. But I really enjoy doing this, and I don't do this with any scripts. I like to run these things with ideas, experiences that I've had, conversations that I might have had, meditations, anything that really brings to light something worthwhile talking about and sharing it with you, and not to prove anything, because let's face it, we're all common men. Even if we had the money and the time, and we would never have the authorization to go outside of our regular life to see what the truth really is. So we have to kind of just work on our own ideas, do our own research, do our own meditations, talk to people, and really come up with our own truth. 'Cause my truth is not your truth. Your truth is not my truth. It all happens in this space between our ears, right? Right here, between this ear, in that brain that never sees the light of day. It just relies on inputs from five senses, probably more. If you look at things like I do, the psychic work and the mediumship work, so there's got to be more senses than five. However, all of it gets it get input into this gray matter, white matter, all that stuff here in your skull, and your reality is created. So therein lies what your truth is, right? So I have this friend. I call him a friend, although I've never met this man. He lives in Nigeria, and he was born and raised there. Speaks really good English, speaks English well. I better say that right, right? You English teachers out there are going to slap me upside the head. We have talked probably for the last, I don't know, I want to say almost 4 years. And he originally reached out to me because he had a lot of interesting gifts, things that was happening to him, and he didn't understand it, and he wanted to make some sense of it. And that's usually what the kind of clients I get that come in my door, well, not my door literally, but come into my life. And they just really want to figure out, well, what it is that's going on. So we've been talking for a very, very long time. I talked to him. I called him yesterday. Yes, yesterday. And it was probably his next day, of course, but it doesn't matter. There's quite a distinct time difference there. And the conversation started like really kind of slow, and he didn't, he originally said he didn't have a whole lot of experiences or things to talk about. But then he got on this, I would say a rant, if you will, a stream of conversation that that really was about, I will just say, we'll put it into a quote, uh, this reality being scripted, planned, orchestrated, much like the Matrix, right? Or a simulation might happen. And and I think it began, if I remember correctly, with free will. And he said he's been doing a lot of research, he's been doing a lot of things, developing a program that he says will come out later, and we can kind of give you little tidbits on that here shortly when we're in the video, rather, as we talk. But he's using a lot of math and algorithms and stuff like that, and really got interested recently in the stars and astrology. He's he was just going on and on and about how accurate astrology is. You're basically saying, your life is basically determined on when you were born, and your life kind of goes along a very specific and predictable path based on when you were born. Even said in his research in his history, which I didn't know this, but all the ages before us have always looked at astrology and have always used astrology for signs and information and I guess predictions is a good way to put that. But they also try to meticulously plan when children were going to be born so that they had the type of life that they wanted them to have. I find that really interesting. And he really went on and on and on about uh, the fact that free will really doesn't exist. And you could argue that for years and years and years, and nobody would ever come to a conclusion. I don't know if I'm entirely convinced that there's no free will, but I'll talk about what he brought up and see if it makes any sense to you. I remember years ago when I was in college, I guess it wasn't that many years ago, probably about 4 or 5, maybe 6, I don't know. I was in philosophy class. I thought it was going to be an easy class. I thought, well, I like to talk. I should be able to banter back and forth with people and convince people of my opinion and them to do the same. And it turned out to be way different than that, way harder than I could ever imagine. But I did a couple of papers on free will. And I was so bent on the fact that we have free will that I think the consensus of my story went something like this. I probably should have reread it before I did this podcast, but it was to the extent that even if you were chained to a floor and everything that you could possibly move on your body was kind of locked down, taped up, chained down, whatever. That even in a moment like that, that there was still free will. You could still choose to blink your eyes. You could still choose to take deeper breaths, change your breath. There are some things that you could still make choices about. And so I was really thoroughly convinced that free will is always available at some level. Maybe not at the level we think it is, of course, but maybe our free will is just simply that we can choose whatever toothpaste we want, whatever kind of car we would like, or rather, what color of car we would like to have, maybe the type of shirt we want. But some of the big things in life may not be free will at all. And this is where this conversation was coming across with this friend of mine. The way he described it, he called it an alien computer or a computing machine that lives outside of what we call reality, and that it was the master manipulator for this reality and every single thing that happens. Everything that happens to me, to you, is scripted and planned, almost like we're being run through a simulation, maybe many times over, to see if the simulation can come up with a different conclusion or maybe it's an experiment to see how we can or how they can enhance, I don't know, humans or human life or where human life goes as it evolves. I'm not sure, right? But that in some ways that it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you look at the simulation theory, ideas and research and what people talk about with that, even the what is his name? Neil, it's a scientist. Neil deGrasse Tyson, that's his name. That's what it is. Is when he was asked if we lived in a simulation, I believe he said that the chances of us being in base reality, which is the original reality, wherever or whatever that is very astronomically low. He put a number to it. I don't remember what it was, but his idea was this, and this is where my friend was going. I put a little spin on it here in a minute, but where, for example, in let's use this reality as we know it. What are we doing now? We're creating AI. We're allowing AI, rather. I think it's always been around. However, AI is now coming in the picture, artificial intelligence, and it is going to, as we can all probably see, it will eventually take over most everything we do. Our thinking processes, much of what we do for work, uh, you name it. It's going to become much smarter than us and much more efficient. I mean, it's if you've not used artificial intelligence, sorry, that's kind of an oxymoron, right? It is just amazing. You can feed it thousands of documents and it can go through it in minutes and give you a summary or an executive summary or whatever you ask it to do. It can do it in such record time. It's just amazing. But as AI eventually takes over, right, then most of the time civilizations come to a close or human life as we know it, so to speak, gets reset, right? And so Neil Tyson, deGrasse Tyson, I cannot say his name. Anyway, the scientist talks about the fact that, we may be multiple layers of simulations uh, in the queue, if you will, right? So if we at some point can now create simulations with the advent of AI to such a degree that we can't tell the difference, we can create our own simulation, and eventually maybe that simulation becomes conscious. And then as that simulation grows, it gets to the point where we're at with AI and the ability to create its own simulation on and on and on and on. And it just keeps going down this rabbit hole. So the chances of us being base reality is probably not very likely, which means we're the initial. I'd like to think we are. That'd be kind of cool if we were. But we're probably somewhere in the middle, somewhere in that queue, right? And so what my friend was talking about makes sense in the respect that many people are saying similar things, maybe not calling it an alien computer. Uh, I have seen in some of my meditation journeys what appears to be very large reality generation machines and just amazing metallic and technological and electronic type device or devices or whatever you want to call it. It's huge that creates realities. And I'm not saying that that's true because I saw it, but some of these things he's talking about make sense to me in the respect that I've seen them in the past in some way, shape, or form, right? And the other thing that he brought up, the spin I wanted to put in that just kind of threw me off for a minute. He goes, "Well, what if what we know as God, call it whatever you want, right? The creator, the ultimate creator, the designer, the divine, whatever. But in his words, what if God also doesn't have a choice, doesn't have free will, and that God created a simulation that was started with boundaries and without the ability to give the conscious beings free will. So what if God is part of that mix as we know God? I'm like, wow, that's something I never really thought about. Uh, we could argue about God who created us for an eternity as well, just like we could argue about free will for an eternity, right? But he just made a tremendous amount of sense. And he was saying that he's developing a program that can predict and has predicted with great accuracy his life, at least. I don't know if he's experimenting on others yet, but to a degree of accuracy that's just phenomenal. And I know he's not the first one to do that. And maybe his program is going to be similar. But when I was Googling that, put it in the search bar while I was talking to him, there's a lot of people doing that. You got things like gematria calculators and on that use math as the basis for predictions and predictability and seeing the future. I don't know if he's perfected that or anybody's perfected that to see the past. However, it'd be an interesting experiment to go back and check your program or your design on things that did happen in the past so you can validate it, right? Perhaps he's going to do that. I don't know. That'd be really cool. But he brought up a story. He brought up a lot of stories from the Bible. And the Bible is, once again, we're not going to argue about the authenticity of it, but there's a lot of interesting things in it that he brought up. And one of the things he brought up, he says, what if the Tower of Babel, remember that story, that the inhabitants or the human beings at that time of the story were building a tower to reach God or to reach whatever information. I think that's what the story's about. They were probably getting too close to knowing the truth. And God, in this story, confused their languages. All of a sudden, every language that now exists on this planet or has existed began at that time. But my friend brought an interesting spin on that. He said, well, maybe he did not really create new languages, but the inability to hear the information that they were seeking, which caused them to try to find other ways to, I don't know, to put that into some kind of sense, some kind of logical sense. Languages were born. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things. But if you look at the idea of a simulation, which I think if you look really, really hard, you do a lot of research, you will find a lot of things that really support the idea of what a simulation might be. For one, if we were in a simulation, how would we know? There would be really no escape. Trying to reach the author or the architect or the designer of a program you might be in would be like the pages of a book trying to jump out of the book, find the author. We all know that's not going to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen in this scenario as well. So if we live in a simulation, how would we know? Well, there's some things that have been tested, experiments that have been run that might suggest that there are some indications that we could very well be in a simulation. One being, if there was a simulation in a program, like in a computer, there are limits, there's boundaries, there's certain things that you cannot go beyond or past. In the case of this reality, that's the speed of light. The speed of light is constant. It doesn't change. I mean, I've looked at some research and there's some people that suggest that it minutely changes depending on certain things. I don't think that aligns with my truth, but I don't know, who knows? But however, it is relatively constant. And that's one thing, right? So Speed of light is constant. The other thing is that as they do math and calculations to sort through quantum physics or physics in general, all that stuff. Because let me back up on that for a second. So all the languages that were confused, all the languages that we speak now, all the different dialects and all the different tongues, all the different things that we use to communicate. There's one thing that is common across all platforms, and that is math. Math is absolutely my worst subject. I cannot stand it. Doesn't make any sense to me. However, math is math in China, in Russia, in Indonesia, and everywhere on this planet. I put that in quotes, right? This reality, math is the only thing that is common, a common language. So when they use these equations to quote unquote prove things or to try to make sense of these things, one of the things that's come up is for some reason they're finding in their massive equations. Don't ask me how this works, or I just know that they talked about it on lots of videos and lots of researchers talked about this. Is they find error correcting codes in the fabric of reality, if you will, in their equations that describe the fabric of reality. Error correcting codes are what are used in our common everyday computers that we have now. So what that means is that whenever something is happening on your computer or on the internet or whatever, these these correction codes bring everything back to where the balance is, where it kind of resets your computer back to baseline. So you can go off and do all these things and all these programs and all these different things. And when you're done or when you stop, it just kind of resets, these error correcting codes. And so it doesn't allow the computer to go wonky and go all over the place, right? So they're finding these things in their equations. So it doesn't prove anything, but it sure does make you think, right? I'd like to think we aren't in a simulation. It'd be nice to know at some point that this is real, right? This is not just information or data or digits that are put together to make me feel like I'm a human being named Rob, right? Name that was given to me. However, I think if we look at the simulations we're able to do now, the artificial simulations that we can do now, virtual simulations, you can put on a headset and it feels like it's no different than what we consider this reality. In our current timeline, we're able to produce simulations that are very indistinguishable between what we consider our real simulation. And imagine what it's going to be like in 5, 10 years. I remember when I was a kid, I'm 65 now, there was no computers. There was barely phones in homes. Look how quickly we have advanced in 50 some odd years. I mean, we're exponentially going to the technological age where, as you remember earlier in this discussion, where civilizations have been talked about having reached this, like Atlantis and Lemuria and all these different things, right? Where they've reached the age of an enlightenment, if you will, or technological advances so great that it overtook the human beings, right? We're kind of headed that way. So I don't know if that's scary or if that's just, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know what to say about that. But I don't know if I disagree with my friend, but if incompletely, right? I don't know if I agree with him completely, but his take on it is that it really doesn't matter what decision we think we've made as a choice, that choice was already designed to be made. It's sort of like that line in The Matrix when that woman that was the psychic, I can't think of what they called her, but when uh, Neo went to see her, uh, I remember the phrase went something like, "You did not come here to make a choice. You came here to understand why you made the choice." That's a very powerful statement. Even if you look at research that's being done using brain scans and EEGs, looking at the activity. Sorry, hit my mic. Looking at the activity of the mind and the different parts of the mind that are responsible for making decisions. I don't know what part of the brain or mind that is, but in all the studies I've looked at, I found that as many as 7 seconds before a decision is realized, if you will, by the conscious mind, which is the really smart part of the activity of our brain, right? Our mind, up to 7 seconds before that happens, a decision is already made. And in that case, if that's true, if that science is true, which I do believe it is, are we really making the decisions? Or are the decisions being made somewhere deep in our subconscious, somewhere from without us, outside of us? Are we simply the receiver? Are we just simply the character that's being fed information and making that character believe that they have free will and that they can decide and they can actually make decisions and choose things? Oof, that's kind of deep right there, right? It seems like the more time goes on, the more science is proving the metaphysical and the spiritual ideas. And it's also showing us that really we're all saying the same thing, we're just using different terms. I mean, think about that for a second. If I talk to you about a metaphysical journey I had through meditation, or some kind of random download or message I got, and and it's accurate, for example, which most time it is, but how can I prove to you where that comes from? How can I prove to you how I got that? How can I prove to you the method that I use? I can't prove anything to you about that. I can't prove to you any aspect of that. Now, the only thing that is very helpful and very relevant is when I'm the message is for somebody else and it makes sense to them and it's helpful to them. It's great. But that doesn't mean I know where it really comes from. I have my ideas, I have my thoughts, I have my beliefs, I have my truth, but that doesn't mean that's where it's coming from. Where is this coming from? I don't know, right? I don't think we'll ever really know, being alive, what our real, let me back up. I don't think we'll ever know what our reality truly is. And I think I can speak for all of us here that the hope is that when we get to the other side of this life, that we can actually get a glimpse back and go, that's what it was, so that we can have some kind of closure. Right now, we don't really know. Here I am talking about these things, but I don't know. I asked my friend, I said, "So you believe in the stars?" I said, "To me, they appear to be fixed. They haven't changed in centuries. If we're hurtling through space, right? Spinning around the sun, spinning around the axis, hurtling with the Milky Way through the galaxy as it's expanding at 75 kilometers per second or something like that. I don't remember. you would think that the sky would change every day, or at least some over the centuries. However, they really haven't. I used to be a navigator long ago, so I mean, I can't speak to that complete truth, but every time I look at the sky, every time I talk to an astrologist, they use the same stars in the same positions, you know. So I asked him that. I said, "Do you really think there's anything out there the way we're being told there's something out there? Is there really space? Is there really planets? Is there really stars? Are there really suns? Is there really life out there? Or are we just in this little silo of an experience that's being orchestrated for us?" Well, he didn't really have an answer. I mean, but he did go back to the Bible and say that it's been used so many times, right? And with great accuracy. So if it's been used for eons and ages and all that stuff for for great accuracy and wisdom and all that, then they probably haven't changed. I don't disagree with that. So it is a bit of a struggle to kind of think about this. It is a challenge to kind of bend your mind a little bit to go, hmm, am I really a character that I'm playing in some kind of simulation, maybe some kind of game? Hopefully not an NPC, a non-player character that just does the same thing all the time, right? But at least maybe we have consciousness. Well, consciousness can be described lots of ways, but the base definition is you're aware that you exist. I'm aware of me. I can see me. I can see myself in the camera now as I'm right. I can experience me. In my opinion, my primary opinion, through my experience with working with others, doing hypnosis, doing all those things, I believe, primarily believe that we do come here to, in an agreement, perhaps contract, in some type of agreement to have an experience or experiences. And we choose the life or we're given the life, either way, maybe voluntold, not volunteered, but that we come here knowing before we get here, get into this meat suit to have an experience that we're going to hit certain milestones, certain mile markers in life that are inevitable. They're going to happen. Doesn't matter. It's that in between part that gets slushy. And that's where I think free will or decisions happen. I do believe it's a mix. That is my opinion based on my experience, based on all the stuff I've looked at, all the people I've talked to, all the above. I think it's a mix. I do think there is some free will. Perhaps how fast or slow or not at all we get to these mile markers, I don't know. However, I do really think that being human, having the opportunity to exist, to have pain, to know love, to know hate, to know joy, all these things are just incredible. Sometimes they feel like they really suck. But based on my experience of not being in a body through meditation and taking people through hypnosis into journeys, the spiritual realm is full of love. I call it spiritual realm, but that realm where you exist as energy or a light being or not a body. You're aware you exist, but none of this stuff we get to experience in this life happens there. And I saw a video the other day where somebody was interviewing a young lady and she was just ecstatic. I mean, she had these completely black eyes, so that's a little weird, but just ecstatic that she got the opportunity to come here and to have a body. And if we could really capture that, regardless of what our reality is, right? Whether it's round earth, flat earth, oval earth, underwater Earth, simulation, it doesn't matter. We are here by tremendous odds. 400 trillion to one, science will tell you that we actually exist. There's a lot of things that go in that, but that's a big number. So if you're here, you're one of the special ones. So let's treat it that way. Let's go after as much wisdom and enlightenment as we can possibly get. And that's why we're here, in my opinion. Biggest reason we're here is to learn as much as we can about all that exists. Because everything that exists or could exist exists now. But our little 1% filter that we have with our senses doesn't give us the full picture. Even though it seems full, it's not even close. Even in the Bible, we'll go back to that. Solomon was granted many more lives by God, and many more years of life by God, because he didn't want riches. He didn't want money. He didn't want things. He wanted to be endowed with more wisdom. Even if you go back to Edgar Cayce, the great American prophet, he believes in life after life after life. He believes wholeheartedly in God and Jesus and the Bible as well. And he will tell you that what you should, or he did tell you, he's not around anymore, but that you should learn everything you can possibly learn in this life, for it'll make the next life better, next life easier, get you closer to the ultimate goal, which in his opinion and many people's opinion, and even mine, when we rejoin God or the source or where we came from, we will finally be able to be that complete soul and be back in union once again with who we truly are. So take this life, run with it, do something with it. Don't just sit around binge watching TV, drinking beer with your buddies all every weekend. You know, put something into this life. You don't have to be rich and popular, because that's fleeting as well. And it's a big burden anyway. You know, we all want to have more money. We all want to be popular, but in the end, 100 years from now, nobody's going to know who I am, even if I was the most popular person in the world. It's just not going to happen. So I do look forward to working with any and all of you. And when I work with others, I learn, you learn, everybody learns. Many of the things I talk about, I learn from clients by working with them and in sharing between them and myself. And you can go pop onto my web page if you like. If you're interested, take a look at that. Lightbymazek.com. I do lots of cool things, and I really look forward to hearing from you guys and working with you guys. And hey, let's live our life. Let's do something with life, because we're alive and we're at a tremendous odds. We're here. Namaste. Stay strong and live your life.